Thank you. I'm Anita Coles, I'm from Liberty. And, I'm from Liberty, and I'm just wondering, under New Labour we saw a massive expansion, well, the introduction of ASBOs and civil orders generally, breach of which leads to criminal offence, which obviously then criminalises something that may well not have been criminal to begin with. I'm just wondering what your positions are in terms of the use of civil orders and the expansion that we've seen more recently with gang injunctions and control orders and so on.
I think in respect of the antisocial behaviour agenda, this was something that in 1997 didn't even appear in our election manifesto, because I think that the debate on crime was far too narrow. I think that since then there's been a major change and recognition of the importance in many communities like that, which I represent up in South Shields, but also in more affluent parts of the country, that this is a key agenda. I think that we cannot simply have a punitive approach to it. Ed Balls referred in his introduction to the importance of a real offer to our young people, and I think that's absolutely key to making sure that we've got the right approach. Let's come to a control orders later on, because I think the whole anti-terrorist area is a rather different one. I think you mentioned control orders in your question.
As far as control orders and ASBOs are concerned, look, I live sandwiched between 3 estates in Hackney. I know what people have to say about social disorder and young people and noise and loutishness, and I'm not saying these things can't be effective, but the Labour Party I would lead would beware of a rhetoric at the very least which would tend to criminalise all young people, because that isn't fair and that isn't appropriate.
And on the issue of ASBOs, when I became Children's Secretary 3 years ago, I was attacked a number of times by the Daily Mail over my 3 years, but the first one was actually on the issue of ASBOs, because I said that I didn't think you judged the quality of society by the number of ASBOs which you granted, but surely having fewer ASBOs would be a good thing. And apparently this was completely unacceptable to the Daily Mail, but I think it's absolutely right in what we ought to be doing. Look, there are times when you need these things, but actually we should be aiming to prevent young people getting into difficulties in the first place. And we know what are the characteristics which a young person is likely to get into difficulty with the law or into trouble in their community, which are being a looked after child, having an older brother or parent who has been in custody, or having a special educational needs, particularly a communication need, and we should be looking for those things and acting early.
On the point about ASBOs, which I think is Emily from Liberty asked, look, let me tell you honestly about this. I have had a change of heart on this, having become an MP, because, and I basically agree with what Ed said, we mustn't demonise young people. We should celebrate the fact that the vast majority of young people in this country do great things for their community. We should be careful about criminalising behaviour, but on the other hand, when people are in your surgeries in tears about repeated behaviour which is making their life, the answer is not to say, well, look, there's nothing that can be done. And that is the gap that antisocial behaviour orders are trying to fill. And I'm perfectly happy to say that some of the way they were implemented was wrong, and that it did involve too many people going to prison as well. But I think the principle of having antisocial behaviour orders is in my view, right.
Now, Lucy. I'm probably the only lawyer on the panel, I think, so I'll answer your question directly. You were from Liberty, yeah, and you asked about whether or not you should have civil orders that, when you breach civil orders, result in a criminal sanction, and presumably you're concerned about the burden of proof that's available and the way in which the orders are obtained. The reason that antisocial behaviour orders initially required a civil procedure was basically because witnesses were intimidated, they were frightened to come forward, they didn't feel that the system would back them up, and therefore you could take third-party evidence, you could have a system in a different way. The burden of proof is actually the criminal burden of proof, which is beyond reasonable doubt. And we could argue as lawyers till the cows come home about how appropriate that is. But the reason was because so many people in our communities were frightened to death of reprisals and intimidation if they came forward. And actually half the antisocial behaviour orders are on adults, not on young people. There are some pretty nasty adults in our country, and I think we do need tools to tackle the kind of problems that they cause.